Hi everyone, my name is Rachel and I'll be breaking down the round 3 motion from the Shanthi Peries Cup. The motion is this house prefers an inquisitorial justice system over an adversarial judicial system. Forgive me, I always trip over the word inquisitorial, so if I do mess it up in between, don't mind too much. There are three main things that you want to characterize on either side of the house. So firstly is what crime looks like. So it's always advantageous in a justice motion to talk about how there's a victim involved, there's harm done to them, and in that sense you go on to, so just characterize the nature that there's actually harm that happens, and that is why justice is so important, that you don't prosecute the wrong person, you give justice to the victims. But secondly, you need to talk about what the justice system is trying secondly, you need to talk about what the justice system actually looks like on either side of the house. And I think it's important, so rather than, there's already an info slide, right? So you just talk about what it looks like basically, about inquisitorial justice system. So this is where judges take an active role in finding evidence and they come to a decision. Whereas adversarial justice is when there's a defense and a prosecutor, lawyers that present their cases, and the judge acts as a referee, that a jury system is involved, and that's what it looks like. But we already know this from the info slide. So what's advantageous is you talk about the objectives, right? So proposition, you tell me that at the heart of justice is objective truth, right? That's the only way you can achieve it. And on your side, you don't have any external biases that come into play. You have truth and sole truth. And that is what will ensure better justice. And thirdly, then you prove that is what your burden is, to prove that you have better justice on your side and how you're achieving that, and show how you achieve that. On opposition, it's best to characterize this the objective of the justice system as you want to get better justice, right? That's still the objective, but justice isn't black and white. That is, and you portray it in a more humanistic, like a very human approach towards achieving justice, where emotions are taken into account, but there it's not just raw facts and data. It's not black and white. You try to understand why things happen, and you remove bias as much as you can on your side as well, right? And in that, you prove your burden on how you're getting better justice. On proposition, there are two key arguments you can run. One on the quality of justice, and second on the quantity of justice. Quality of justice, so you contextualize this and say that adversarial justice relies a lot on representation. Now, because there is a lawyer presenting your case on your behalf. The problem here is twofold. One is that evidence or data gets fabricated. On their worst case, sure, lawyers will lie, but their reputation is at stake. So what this fabrication actually looks like is far more subtle things, like the way you present it, the way you cross-examine a witness, the way you, because you already know in your head that you need to win this case. So when you look for evidence, you're selectively looking for evidence, and the way you present your evidence is also with that goal in mind. So in that sense, you're going to hinder the process of finding out the truth. Right? It's the tone they use, the charisma they use. But secondly, it's problematic because there is a massive gap between, because lawyers are costly. So you can only get good justice most of the time if you have an expensive lawyer, and that limits justice lawyer to a very, say, like a small minority of society, right? So you aren't achieving good justice for a lot of people, and people don't even want to report or seek justice because they know it's like this, and that's incredibly bad because you want people to achieve justice. Yeah, how do you solve this on your side? You can say that the whole issue with having a rich lawyer is completely eliminated on your comparative, right? And you can always preempt and say they'll bring out about state lawyers existing. So these are lawyers that the state provides you with, but those lawyers cannot select their cases and they're extremely overworked, right? So even if they're good lawyers, they're taking on so much work that they're not at their best capacity, right? So that issue still exists, and you're completely eliminating, and you balance out that system where there is no gap between rich and poor people anymore. But secondly, you solve it by finding objective truth. A judge doesn't have a goal of, okay, I get paid if I win this case, right? So because of that, they're going to find out objective truth, and the evidence, even the process of them thinking, the process of finding the evidence is all with this neutral mindset, and therefore you achieve the truth and best justice. The impacts of this is people are falsely prosecuted, victims get proper justice, people have more faith in the justice system, so therefore they're more likely to seek justice. Yeah, and that creates a deterrence on lowering crime. Also, you can preempt this claim on accountability of judges. Lastly here, right? So obviously opposition is going to come up and bring up about how judges, there's accountability, what if this judge is biased, One, you can also say it's not always just one judge. You can assign think one or more judges to a case. But more importantly, one, now because judges, their reputation is a lot more at stake, because their role in the justice system is far more magnified. They're far more important now, and because of that, their reputation is at stake, so they're less likely to do these things. But secondly, it's also far easier to call them out if they are being biased, whether they're being racist or sexist or homophobic. It's far easier to call them out now, because now they need to justify their reason because it's solely on them, right? So it's far easier. On that comparative, you can say that even if these kind of judges exist, it's harder to call them out because there are so many things at play when it comes to the court. Oh, you can blame the jury, you can blame you can blame the prosecutors, you can blame the lawyers, but you can't, because it's not just them involved. Yeah, so it's far harder to call them out. So that's one thing you can run. Second thing you can run is in terms of quantity, right? You contextualize adversarial justice as it's incredibly time consuming. Hearings take time, each side presenting their case takes time, and they fabricate it. All of that is a very lengthy process, and the problem is that because it's time consuming, people don't want to seek justice either. Yeah, less cases are heard, there's a massive backlog, people are overworked. It's incredibly inefficient system, right? And how you solve this issue is that on your comparative, the process is easy. It's more like, okay, judges witness the case. Judges find the evidence and they close their case. It's not to say that they go through 100 cases all the time. It's just that the process of finding justice is far easier, right? As opposed to judge sitting on multiple hearings all the time, where they have multiple cases simultaneously where they're hearing. This is far less, right? Judges are going to be assigned less cases because it's not just them hearing, it's work that they have to do as well, right? And because you're going to eliminate this whole process of jury, and you already prove you're getting a good quality of justice, it's also going to be a shorter time period. Judges investigate, and they're not doing it on their own. They obviously have teams and all helping them, right? So the process of this happening is fast, and I hope this is very clear, because you investigate, you think, you go over the law and you see what aligns with the law, and then you make your decision. You don't have to go through this whole lengthy process, right? You can also say that judges will become overworked, whatever. You can preempt that and opt, but you can say there's a greater push for people to become judges now because their role is far more serious, right? And you also have very experienced judges. People go into becoming judges far more in your comparative. They're less likely to be overworked because more people are coming in. They're also not less likely to be overworked because they can only handle a limited amount of cases at a time. And in order to ensure better justice, governments will give them just a limited amount of cases. And because it's fast, it trickles down to the people. People feel like, okay, I don't have to wait 10 years to get my case heard. So I'd rather you feel like reporting a case because you know that it's a fast, smoother process, right? So on proposition, because you have a smoother system, you ensure justice. Because of those two things, you overall help the justice system, and that's how you prevail. On opposition, same ideas on quality and quantity. So quality you run as this. You contextualize and say that cases aren't black and white, right? They aren't black and white. Okay, someone robbed somebody, but that's not the end of it, right? There's so many things, right? Whether the intensity of the crime, the reason they did the crime, the intention, all of those things matter, right? So when it comes to that, it's not easy to just provide data and then figure it out. And keep one person in charge of it, or just a very few group of people. That's not very fair, right? And you're not going to achieve good justice. So, and this is very harmful because you can have wrong prosecutions. There's a lot of, you can't call out judges for their biases. And how you solve this on your side is by one, you have really good representation, right? You have judges, you have juries, you have lawyers. You have a lawyer that will listen to your side, listen to what you have done, and then they will present it for you because they are far more, aware of the system. They are aware of you. Whereas a judge doesn't really know you, they only know the law. A lawyer knows the law and you, right? So there's far better representation, and that ensures better justice and trying to find the heart of the problem. But secondly, there's also a lot more accountability when it comes to this kind of system, because there's far more stakeholders involved. So you can easily call out judges, you can easily call out lawyers and whatnot. And you can say that evidence is going to be far better because, one, lawyers also do have a reputation to uphold, so therefore in order for them to win the case they have to be truthful, right? But secondly, there is also going to be better digging, because lawyers do want to win the case, and that's actually beneficial because they are going to have a greater push to investigate this crime far more and dig out all the facts and figures of it. And you hear out the humanistic size of cross-examinations done in front of people, where each side gets to examine the other side, all of those things, right? Plus the disparity is like a possible preempt you can make, right? It's something you can preempt from the beginning, is this whole disparity. But state lawyers do exist, right? And they're not terrible, they're just overworked. But if it's a problem with them being overworked, that's something you can solve, not completely change the justice system. Yeah, but you also need to prove that they do work. But even on your worst case, if they don't really work, this is not the solution for it. So you can ensure better quality of justice, right? You just need to keep pushing about how important it is to hear both sides. Yeah, right. And that way it's far easier for a judge to make a decision. Second idea then is in the quantity, right? You characterize this. There is a massive backlog in cases. That's true. Don't not concede to that. That's true, right? But on their comparative, like on their best case, say they do achieve this to be like, less time consuming, it's because judges go through cases really fast, and when they do that they tend to miss out on things, right? They have a worse quality. So even if they're going to achieve quantity, it's at the cost of the quality of the justice, right? Because they're just closing, they're trying to close as many cases as they possibly can, right? And that's incredibly problematic. But that's just on their best case. But the thing is, when judges are assigned a limited number of cases, there is going to be less cases done as a whole, right? And there's going to be less manpower in one particular case, right? And that will slow it down. Whereas on your comparative, sure, it might take a bit longer for each individual case to close, but that's not necessarily a bad thing if you're going to achieve good justice at the end. But also you need to understand, I want to be very clear about this, is that you can run more cases simultaneously on your comparative than theirs. You have more manpower per case, right? A judge can hear about 6 cases in a month, whereas they cannot investigate 6 cases in a month, right? Because they can hear 6 cases because they're not the ones actively investigating. There are more people involved in that particular case. So even if one case takes longer, and that's going to give you better justice, that's good. But you're also going to be able to do more cases simultaneously, so you have a better quantity of justice. You have more people receiving justice, yeah, over a period of time. And this is important because it ensures that, same thing as earlier, people have better faith in the justice system, therefore they're more likely to report cases, and because of that you ensure better justice, a smoother system, right? Similar arguments. In this debate, I see 3 main clashes. One is on which side achieves more fair justice, but secondly on which side has better accountability, particularly for judges. Again, this is it's connected to the first clash on which side achieves better justice, but I think in terms of accountability of judges can be its own clash and which side you achieve this. And third clash then is about on which side can you solve this backlog of the justice system, yeah? And basically which side has a smoother system, and it keeps going back and forth, because yeah, that's all. But yes, if you have any questions, please drop it down in the comments.